The battlefield was chaos, a skirmish with a rival pack that had drawn out every ounce of Kai's alpha strength and Sara's raw elemental power. Kai, moving in his shifted, lightning-fast form, was driving a group of rogues back toward the perimeter. Sara, channeling pure electric energy, was providing cover fire. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and wet earth. In the height of the chaotic defense, a rogue wolf was thrown backward, stumbling directly toward Sara. Kai reacted instantly, lunging to intercept. They moved with perfect, instinctive coordination, the kind that defines a fated mate bond. Kai slammed into the rogue, but in the final moment, his massive forearm accidentally brushed Sara's shoulder. The contact was instantaneous, overwhelming, and catastrophic. A shockwave of raw, screaming energy, part wolf kinetic force, part primal lightning, erupted from the point of contact. It wasn't just a spark, it was a contained, terrifying explosion. The air went white-hot. Trees within a 100-foot radius were ripped from the ground, instantly incinerated. The ground cracked like a shattered mirror. When the smoke cleared, the rogue was vaporized. Kai and Sara stood 5 feet apart, miraculously unharmed, but their skin was scorched, and the earth around them was a steaming, blackened crater. Back in the safety of the pack house, the grim-faced pack elder examined the two mates, who stood stiffly apart, hyper-aware of the magnetic pull now vibrating between them. "The bond is cursed," the elder stated, his voice heavy with ancient fear. "Your connection is too absolute, too primal. It has become violently magnetic." The elder explained the Fey magic. The combined power of an alpha werewolf and a rare lightning elemental was inherently unstable. Now amplified by a decades-old territorial curse, their proximity caused a volatile energy surge. "The 6-foot boundary is your survival zone," the elder warned, pointing to the invisible line between them. "If you cross it, the energy will spike exponentially. If you touch again, the resulting elemental reaction will be a localized supernova. It will destroy you both and everything within a mile of the pack house." Sara's face drained of color. A supernova? Just from a touch? Kai stared at the devastating consequence of his instincts. The simplest, most basic comfort, a touch to soothe the fear, was now a death sentence. "There is one thing that can contain this," the elder revealed, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Aetherium Isolator, a silver containment cuff crafted by the Fae themselves. But it is lost, hidden in the most hostile place imaginable, the territory of the Earth Elementals." Kai looked at Sara, the primal alpha urge to pull her close, fighting the terrifying reality of their mutual annihilation. "Then we go now. We retrieve the isolator, no matter the cost. But mate, we do it 6 feet apart." Welcome to Lily's Heart Tales, where love is usually forbidden, but this time it's literally lethal. Alpha Kai is the powerful werewolf leader, and Sara is a rare, volatile lightning elemental. They are fated mates, bound by an explosive curse that makes the most basic desire, a simple touch, a guarantee of mutual annihilation. If they get too close, their combined elemental energy reaches a critical, catastrophic peak. If they touch, the resulting supernova will destroy not just them, but everything for a mile around. They must find the ancient Aetherium Isolator, the only cure, while fighting a primal, overwhelming urge to just touch. If you enjoy a truly high-stakes romance where the tension is so thick you could fry an egg on it, hit that subscribe button and prepare for the most agonizing distance in mate history. Chapter 1. The immediate aftermath of the curse was defined by agonizing restraint. Kai set up a brutal training regimen in the pack's largest, most isolated clearing, away from any structures that could be damaged. The goal was to train their combat synchronization while constantly maintaining the mandated 6-foot perimeter. This was less about fighting and more about resisting the devastating primal urge to close the distance. They were fated mates, and their shared space thrummed with a raw magnetic tension that caused both their skin to prickle with anticipation and fear. Kai moved first, a blur of practiced alpha motion around a series of wooden obstacles. "Maintain distance, Sara," he commanded, his voice tight. "Your lightning needs to arc around me, not through me. Think of the space between us as a high-voltage wire. One slip and we're both dust." Sara followed, channeling her elemental energy through her hands, striking targets with controlled bolts of electricity. It was excruciating. The closer she got, the stronger the magnetic pull became, a physical, aching void demanding to be filled. She fought the urge by focusing on the danger, channeling the excess volatility into the air, causing the pine needles around the clearing to stand on end. During a complex drill requiring a simultaneous double strike, Sara misjudged a step. She stumbled, and the sudden lurch brought her within 4 feet of Kai. The energy spiked instantly. A violent blue-white arc of uncontrolled lightning screamed out of her hand, missing the target and slamming directly into the powerful, expensive pack radio Kai used for communication. The radio exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. They both froze, panting, the smell of ozone and burnt electronics filling the air. "Damn it, Sara!" Kai snarled, not out of anger, but sheer primal terror at the close call. He forcefully backed away, putting 10 feet between them. The shock was clear on his face. This wasn't just a curse of distance, it was a curse of instability. "You're shorting out basic electronics just by being close to me. We need to move in absolute lockstep, or we'll be too volatile to even track the isolator." Sara pressed her knuckles to her lips, fighting the rush of guilt and the shame of having to resist the man who was designed to be her anchor. She knew that every step toward the cure would increase the risk, and the slightest slip of control meant a catastrophic end to their world. The training session had ended with the smashed radio, leaving Kai and Sara with a cold, hard truth. The closer they were geographically to the Earth elemental territory where the isolator was hidden, the more volatile the curse's magnetic pull would become. They continued their journey on foot, traversing rough, untamed terrain, their forced distance an invisible heavy chain between them. Kai scouted ahead, his alpha senses sharp, while Sara followed, maintaining a meticulously measured 9-foot buffer, eyes constantly scanning the ground and the air for threats. The silence was agonizing, each step a testament to the primal longing they had to deny. Suddenly, without warning, the magnetic force intensified violently. It wasn't a gradual spike. It was a sudden, agonizing jerk, like a powerful, unseen hand yanking Kai forcefully backward toward Sara. The effect was involuntary and immediate, a terrifying reversal of their controlled separation. Kai stumbled, his body straining against the sudden, massive attraction, a low, desperate snarl escaping his throat as his wolf fought the magical pull. Sara felt the equal and opposite force, her elemental core screaming at the sudden proximity, her skin crackling with uncontrolled arcs of blue lightning that were drawn inward toward Kai. "Anchor yourself, Sara! Now!" Kai roared, planting his feet and sinking his claws deep into the earth, trying to resist the violent acceleration toward their mutual annihilation. Sara reacted instantly, channeling her stabilizing energy into a thick iron pole she had brought for emergencies, slamming the pole into the ground behind her. The pole immediately began to shimmer and vibrate violently under the magnetic stress. They were locked in a desperate physical stalemate. Two forces of nature, magnetically tethered and rapidly approaching critical mass. The air between them was humming, the 6-foot safe zone dangerously shrinking. It took every ounce of Kai's strength and Sara's mental discipline to maintain the strained separation, sweat pouring from them both. They finally managed to stabilize the pull, settling back into a tense, agonizing equilibrium, their faces pale with shock and exhaustion. The curse wasn't just a rule. It was a physical, aggressive enemy, determined to force them into a final fatal touch. Chapter 2. The air changed instantly as Kai and Sara crossed the border into the hostile Earth elemental territory. The familiar, fresh scent of pine and moss was replaced by the dense, oppressive smell of wet stone and metal, a scent that instantly amplified the magnetic pull between them. They were moving at a strained, awkward pace, deliberately separated by the 6-foot void, their bodies aching to bridge the gap, while their minds screamed about the impending supernova. Before they could find cover, the earth rose to meet them. Chloe, the powerful, ruthless earth elemental leader, emerged from a fissure in the rock, her eyes fixed on the infamous Alpha and his volatile mate. She was surrounded by a phalanx of guards, their hands already crackling with rock manipulation energy. "Welcome to my land, Wolf," Chloe sneered, her voice dry and abrasive like grinding stone. She noted the agonizing distance between the mates with shrewd curiosity. "You travel with a distance between you that suggests weakness, not strength, a peculiar choice for a fated pair." Kai immediately shifted to his partial alpha form, larger, faster, and utterly menacing, while maintaining his 6-foot barrier from Sara. "We're here for the Isolator, Chloe. We want no conflict with your territory." "Conflict finds the weak," Chloe replied, snapping her fingers. Instantly, the ground beneath Kai and Sara convulsed. Jagged trenches opened up, and heavy rock slides were initiated, threatening to bury them, or, worse, force them into contact. The fight was a nightmarish coordination exercise. Kai used his strength and speed to deflect the falling debris, dodging the trenches and covering ground, but always having to perform an aggressive sidestep or sudden lurch away from Sara. Sara channeled her energy, using precise lightning strikes to shatter the incoming boulders into harmless gravel before they could pin them down. "Rock slide! Left!" Sara yelled, instantly transmitting the trajectory to the mate mark. Kai dove right, his shoulder missing Sara's hip by mere inches. The surge caused by the close call was painful, frying the hair on the back of his neck and making his teeth ache. But he fought through it. They moved like a broken unit, devastatingly powerful but perpetually threatened by their own proximity. They were the most powerful pair in the forest, yet they were defeated by a mere hug. The irony was agonizingly clear to Chloe, who watched, calculating their peculiar weakness with growing fascination. Chloe watched the agonizing dance of Kai and Sara, the furious efficiency of their fighting skills constantly hampered by their forced, desperate distance. Her ruthless mind immediately dissected their fatal weakness. The Alpha and the Elemental were lethal apart, but touching meant self-destruction. "The bond is cursed," Chloe declared, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "It's not distance you need, Wolf. It's control, and you have none." With a sudden, violent surge of earth magic, Chloe slammed both her fists into the ground. A powerful ripple ran through the bedrock, causing the ground beneath Kai and Sara to instantly sink and shift. Before they could react, thick, obsidian-hard earthen walls erupted around them, forming a tight, inescapable box. The speed of the construction was dizzying. Kai scrambled, trying to shift fully to tear through the rapidly hardening earth, but the walls were too close. They were trapped in a dark, cramped earthen prison barely 8 feet wide. The constraint had vanished, replaced by an immediate deadly proximity. "I don't need to kill you, Alpha," Chloe called, her voice echoing cruelly from the hardening walls. "Your own volatile nature will do the job perfectly." The magnetic pull, already amplified by the metallic ores within the earth walls, spiked to a terrifying, unbearable level. Kai and Sara were slammed against opposite walls, their clothes sticking to their skin as the elemental energy built between them. The 6-foot safe zone was gone. They were less than 7 feet apart, and the earthen box was relentlessly shrinking. The air between them was humming, thick with static and the smell of burning ozone. Sara fought the magnetic pull with everything she had, hands pressed flat against the wall, channeling her excess electricity into the earth to stabilize herself. Kai was straining, his muscles bulging as his pure alpha willpower fought the magical attraction that threatened to hurl him into her. "The walls are closing in, Sara," Kai gasped, his eyes wide with desperate alarm as the pressure began to force them toward the center. "We're 4 feet apart. We have seconds before critical mass. We'll take out the entire territory, mate." "No!" Sara screamed, the effort of controlling her power causing tiny arcs of lightning to dance uncontrolled across her skin. "We break the box, Kai. We channel the power out. We just can't touch. We have to coordinate the largest single blast of our lives, or we die." The walls squeezed, reducing the space to 5 feet. The magnetic force became an agony, twisting their bodies and demanding contact. They had been forced into the eye of their own self-destruct mechanism, and the only path to survival was a shared, volatile explosion they had to control. Chapter 3. The cramped, obsidian-hard earthen prison was down to barely 4 feet of space, and the energy between Kai and Sara had reached an unbearable, shimmering peak. Their clothes were smoking, and their skin was clammy with sweat and static electricity. The magnetic pull was so agonizingly strong that it felt like every molecule in Kai's body was being dragged towards Sara, the center of his volatile mate bond. "I can't hold it, Sara. The density of this earth is amplifying the pull," Kai gasped, his claws scraping uselessly against the obsidian wall. He could feel the countdown to the supernova inside his chest. It wasn't minutes anymore. It was seconds. Sara, despite the crippling fear, found a desperate clarity. "Don't fight the pull, Kai. Use it. We have to channel all the volatility outward to shatter the walls. We'll use the magnetic acceleration, but we have to time the release the instant before we touch." The risk was insane. 1 microsecond too late, and the energy would complete its circuit between them, annihilating the mountain. They locked eyes across the shrinking space. They had no memory of coordinating a move this complex, yet the primal mate bond, the one thing the curse couldn't silence, allowed for a silent, desperate synchronization. "On 3, Kai rasped, struggling to focus through the pain. 3, 2, 1. At the command, they simultaneously stopped resisting the magnetic pull. They allowed the volatile force to accelerate them toward each other. The air between them screamed with released energy. In the final fraction of a second moment before their skin could graze, they violently shoved their combined elemental and alpha power outward. A blinding flash of raw kinetic and electrical energy exploded, not between them, but outward into the earth. The obsidian walls vaporized in a deafening sonic boom, showering the area with superheated dust and debris. Kai and Sara were thrown backward by the force, slamming safely into the opposite sides of the newly cleared ground. They lay panting, scorched and dizzy, but alive, the immediate threat of a catastrophic touch having passed. For now. They had survived their first, terrifying coordinated supernova attack. But Chloe was already retreating into the shadows, and they still needed the isolator. The chaotic explosion had cracked the earth and sent the surrounding earth elemental guards scrambling for cover, but it had not deterred their leader. Chloe was already moving, trying to exploit the confusion to disappear, clutching a small, leather-bound map case to her side. Kai, still reeling from the successful volatile escape, spotted her immediately. "She has the location, Sara. She's getting away," Kai yelled, struggling to his feet. "We can't catch her in an open field, and we definitely can't risk another close-range fight," Sara shouted back, quickly channeling her remaining energy to neutralize the residual static between them. She knew the Alpha's speed was pointless if he had to break every 6 feet. They had to coordinate a move that was high-risk, non-contact, and utterly precise. Kai relayed his plan instantly. "I'll draw her focus. You hit the ground beneath her feet. A destabilizing blast, not lethal, just enough to make her drop the map." Kai lunged forward, not toward Chloe, but in a wide, sweeping arc to flank her, forcing her attention away from the ground. Chloe, thinking the volatile Alpha was finally too destabilized to fight, diverted her earth magic to create a massive, protective rock shield between herself and Kai. That was the opening Sara needed. She channeled a focused, powerful lightning bolt, not at the shield, but directly into the moist, porous earth under Chloe's feet. The lightning instantly vaporized the trapped moisture, causing a localized, violent eruption of steam and sand. Chloe shrieked in surprise as the ground beneath her vanished. She tumbled backward, her defensive rock shield crumbling, and the precious leather map case flew from her grasp. Kai, moving like a striking snake, slid on the uneven earth and snatched the case with a single, practiced motion before rapidly extending his distance from the stunned elemental leader. Chloe roared in fury, but by the time she regained control, Kai and Sara were already tearing open the case. Inside, a brittle ancient map confirmed their destination. The Aetherium Isolator was sealed within the dangerous, forgotten tunnels of the ancient elemental mine. Chloe's scream of hatred echoed across the rocky border as Kai and Sara turned their backs on the hostile territory and sprinted toward the mine, the magnetic pull now focused on the high-risk promise of the cure. Chapter 4. The entrance to the ancient elemental mine was a jagged scar in the mountainside, a tunnel plunging into cold, metallic darkness. As Kai and Sara stepped inside, the atmosphere changed instantly. The mine wasn't just narrow. It was rich with dense metal ore veins and old, rusted support beams which acted as powerful conductors. The magnetic pull between them, already agonizing, was immediately amplified to a brutal, almost unbearable degree. "This is insane," Kai gritted out, his muscles rigid. They had to widen their distance to nearly 12 feet just to maintain the stability they previously achieved at 6 feet. The constant, aggressive pull was now a physical torment, making every step an act of tremendous willpower. "The metal is turning us into giant magnets, Sara. We have to hug the opposite walls." They were forced into a grotesque dance. Kai pressed himself against the left wall, his strong hands trailing along the cold rock to anchor himself, while Sara navigated the right, channeling her excess electricity into the stone to prevent her from being violently drawn across the gap. The tension was so thick that the mate mark on Kai's chest felt like it was physically straining against his skin. Every time one of them navigated a protruding beam or a jutting vein of metal, the pull would spike, threatening to snap them together. Sara noticed the danger of the environment. "The air is conductive in here, Kai. We can't speak for long. The vibration amplifies the static. We have to use the bond for anything that isn't essential." She transmitted a sharp, non-verbal image through the mate mark. Ahead. Narrow choke point. We must pass one at a time. Kai received the urgent data, the image of the constricted passage and the necessary solution, and responded with a powerful alpha command. "Go first. I anchor." As Sara moved into the bottleneck, the metal support beams on either side dragged her elemental energy towards the center. She had to contort her body, her back pressed hard against the rock, to inch through. Kai watched, his own body shaking violently as the magnetic pull stretched his restraint to the breaking point. If her power flared, or if she touched the metal, the resulting magnetic feedback loop would be catastrophic. They were walking a tightrope made of electricity and willpower, with the constant, agonizing temptation of just letting go and ending the torment. They managed to clear the choke point, but both were gasping, their strength nearly spent, knowing this was just the beginning of the mine's deadly test. The intense magnetic strain had severely depleted their energy, yet Kai and Sara knew they were close. The map led them to a vast cavern deep within the mine, but their path was blocked by a formidable barrier, a colossal, shimmering wall of enchanted obsidian. It was clearly designed to withstand physical force, its surface radiating a dull, magical resistance. "Obsidian," Sara whispered, her voice tight with strain. "It absorbs kinetic energy. Your shift won't break it, Kai. My lightning will just flash off the surface." Kai circled the wall, his gaze analytical. He found a tiny hairline fissure, a flaw in the enchantment, likely intended to allow only the original Earth Elemental guards to pass. "It's too small for us to slip through, but not too small for your power," he transmitted through the bond, sending Sara an urgent, detailed image of the fissure. "We need a full power blast focused entirely on that one point." The risk was immense. Channeling Sara's full lightning power in the metal-rich, confined space would cause a magnetic spike that would instantly pull them together. They would have to execute a high-risk, coordinated move, a non-contact maneuver that required Kai to physically interfere with the explosion's shrapnel without interfering with the current itself. "I have to take the blast," Kai decided, his tone unwavering. "The fissure is too small. When the wall shatters, the shrapnel will be magnetized and flung directly back at you. I will shield you from the debris, but I cannot touch you. You have to fire the lightning through me." Sara's heart seized. "Kai, no. The elemental kickback. The wolf can handle the kickback. The mate cannot handle the shrapnel," he commanded through the bond, silencing her protest. "Ready yourself. Channel everything you have and fire past my shoulder and into that crack. Do not waver." Kai placed himself directly in front of Sara, turning his massive back to the obsidian wall. He widened his stance and shifted slightly, using his tough alpha hide as a temporary, living shield. The magnetic pull was now agonizing, his body screaming at him to close the inch between their backs, but he stood firm. Sara gritted her teeth, tears stinging her eyes. She focused every volt of energy she possessed, aiming past the line of his powerful shoulder. She screamed as she released the enormous crackling bolt of lightning. The blast roared forward, narrowly missing Kai and slamming into the hairline fissure. The enchanted obsidian wall didn't just shatter. It vaporized in an immense shockwave, sending a dense spray of superheated magnetic obsidian dust flying backward. Kai roared as the shrapnel slammed into his back, burying itself in his hide, but he held his position. The pain was immense, but he had successfully shielded Sara. As the smoke cleared, revealing the path ahead, Kai stumbled forward, breathing raggedly. He was badly wounded, but alive. Sara rushed to his mandated 6-foot line, her hands hovering helplessly. They had broken the wall, but the cost to the Alpha was severe. The cure was close, but so was their breaking point. Chapter 5. The path was clear, but Kai was struggling. The obsidian shrapnel embedded in his back was amplifying the magnetic strain, and he moved with a ragged limp. Sara kept her strict distance, her heart aching with the agony of being unable to touch and heal him. She transmitted constant, urgent impulses through the bond. "Rest. Slow down. I will take point." They burst into a massive, echoing subterranean chamber. It was cold, dominated by ancient fey glyphs carved into the stone, and in the center, resting on a glowing pedestal, was their objective, the Aetherium Isolator. It was a sleek silver containment cuff, humming with a calm, stable energy, the perfect antidote to their volatile existence. But they were not alone. Chloe, the Earth Elemental leader, was waiting, leaning casually against a pillar of raw crystal, her expression one of cold, smug triumph. She had clearly bypassed the difficult journey, knowing this was the ultimate destination. "How touching," Chloe drawled, slowly pushing off the pillar. The great Alpha risked annihilation to shield his mate. A futile effort, considering what I have to tell you. Kai instinctively shifted slightly, his powerful body positioning itself between Chloe and Sara, maintaining the mandated distance from both. "We have the isolator. Step aside, Chloe." Chloe laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You have the isolator, Alpha, but you don't understand its purpose. This cuff was designed not to cure the volatility, but to contain it, and it only works on one of you." She gestured toward the humming silver cuff. "The isolator can either contain the wolf's kinetic volatility or the elemental's electrical chaos, not both. If the wolf wears it, the mate is safe, but the elemental remains unstable, a threat to herself and the pack." Chloe's eyes gleamed with malice. "Take it, Alpha. Contain your own power. Leave her free to live, but forever unstable, unable to touch anyone without risk. Or leave her safe, but leave your own power permanently volatile and untamed." The choice was a devastating psychological weapon. It wasn't just a threat. It was a demand for one of them to sacrifice their stability forever. Kai looked at the isolator, then back at Sara, his face a mask of resolute refusal. He would not condemn his mate to a life of perpetual danger and agonizing isolation. "I won't take it," Kai stated, his voice ringing with absolute finality. "We share this curse, Chloe. We share the cure. You fail." Chloe watched, amused, as Kai refused the Aetherium Isolator. Her plan was working. The curse's true design was to pit the mates against each other through impossible choices. "You're a fool, Alpha," Chloe scoffed. "The elemental instability is far more dangerous. If she won't take it, you must. Secure your pack's future, contain yourself." Kai took a step toward the isolator, intending to force the cuff onto Sara, believing he was protecting her stability at the cost of his own. But Sara reacted instantly, channeling her lightning not as a weapon, but as a defensive barrier, sending a controlled, non-lethal arc of electricity that slammed into the ground between them, preventing Kai from closing the distance. "Don't you dare, Kai!" Sara pleaded, her eyes flashing with defiance and despair. "I won't let you sacrifice your power. I can learn to live with the volatility. The Alpha needs to be stable for the pack." "And who stabilizes you, mate?" Kai roared, his voice thick with agony. The 6-foot buffer was vibrating violently as their conflicting wills exerted an agonizing, counter-magnetic force. "I won't condemn you to a life where you can't touch anyone. This curse is mine to fix." They were trapped in a fierce emotional standoff, fighting over which of them had the right to suffer permanently. As they struggled, both mates breached the safe perimeter, moving within 5 feet of the isolator's pedestal. The energy instantly spiked. The Aetherium Isolator, untouched, began to vibrate and hum violently. A ripple of silver energy shot out from the cuff, washing over Kai and Sara. The spike was brief, but intense, forcing both mates to stumble backward and regain their separation. Chloe looked surprised, then laughed again. "Ah, the isolator dislikes your messy feelings. You cannot force the sacrifice, you foolish pups. The Fae built it to require willing, unconditional acceptance of the sacrifice." Sara, catching her breath, looked at the isolator, then at Kai. "Chloe's right. It has to be an absolute choice. We both have to be willing to suffer the consequence, or the isolator won't contain anything. This isn't just a physical barrier, Kai. It's an emotional barrier designed to break the bond through self-sacrifice." Realizing they had to stop fighting each other and turn their attention back to the treacherous elemental leader, Kai nodded grimly. The isolator was not a simple tool. It was the final, devastating test of their commitment. They had been given the solution, but the price demanded was absolute. Chapter 6. Kai and Sara ignored Chloe, who was still gloating over the emotional stalemate she'd created. They turned their attention to the chamber walls, searching for any clue about the Aetherium Isolator's true purpose beyond containing a single volatile power. The ancient Fae glyphs carved into the rock hummed faintly, activated by the powerful magnetic forces recently exerted by the mates. Sara, being the elemental, was the first to recognize a familiar pattern in the Fae script, an old language reserved for wards and containment spells. She carefully traced the inscription while keeping a rigid 12-foot separation from Kai, the obsidian shrapnel in his back still straining the magnetic field. "It's not a curse of repulsion, Kai," Sara whispered, translating the chilling words etched into the stone. "It's a curse of containment. The Fae didn't create the volatility, they amplified it and designed a mechanism to suppress the energy they feared." The script detailed a rivalry between 2 Fae royal houses centuries ago. One was a powerful shadow Fae, the other a destructive sky Fae. Their mates, a wolf alpha and a lightning elemental, just like Kai and Sara, posed a threat because their combined absolute love resulted in an uncontrollable surge of energy, a power that destabilized the Fae's own control over the region. The isolator wasn't meant to cure the magnetism, Kai realized, his eyes widening with understanding. It was meant to contain the excess love. The distance isn't the penalty, it's the buffer against the destructive force of our fated bond. Sara nodded grimly. The activation clause isn't about taking the cuff. It's about accepting the phase goal. It must be activated by the unconditional acceptance of the sacrifice by both mates. We have to agree, together, that distance is necessary to save our world, even if it means sacrificing the touch we crave. That acceptance is the key. As they spoke, a low, powerful rumbling started. Chloe, realizing her psychological tactic had failed, was no longer gloating, her face contorted with enraged malice. She raised her hands, channeling her remaining earth magic into the chamber's ceiling. "You will not defy my territory or my power," Chloe shrieked. "If I can't have stability, neither can you. The chamber dies now." The earth began to shake violently. Rocks and thick support columns screamed under the pressure. Chloe was collapsing the mine, determined to bury them both and, crucially, force them into a final, lethal touch. The magnetic pull spiked to an apocalyptic level, violently wrenching Kai and Sara toward each other as the ceiling began to crumble directly above them. The sound was deafening, the groan of tons of rock and metal screaming under Chloe's enraged command. The entire mine was collapsing, and the ceiling of the final chamber was raining dust and massive debris. Kai and Sara were already fighting the maximum strength of the magnetic pull, which had become a desperate, physical agony. "She's collapsing the roof. Get back," Kai roared, trying to shield Sara from the falling debris while maintaining the vital 12-foot gap. But Chloe was aiming for the final, fatal scenario. With a last immense exertion of her power, she channeled all the falling weight to strategically pin the mates. A massive column of jagged rock slammed down between them, fracturing the floor. The magnetic pull, reacting to the violent shift in conductors, was momentarily released, only to be replaced by the sheer, kinetic force of the collapsing debris, violently pushing them toward the center. They were slammed by the impact. Kai and Sara collided. The touch was brief, explosive, and final. Their combined massive energies, the wild wolf and the untamed lightning, ignited instantly. A blinding, deafening supernova began to form in the space where their bodies met, a contained sphere of pure, unholy fusion. The light was excruciating, and the heat was instantaneous. "It's happening!" Sara screamed, her voice barely audible over the roar of the imploding energy. She felt the volatile power tearing through her, meeting Kai's destructive kinetic force. They were locked in the ultimate embrace, the one that guaranteed annihilation. Chloe, momentarily protected by a self-created obsidian barrier, watched with a triumphant, malicious grin. "You lose, mates! The mountain is yours!" Kai, already feeling the energy consume him, didn't fight the explosion. He looked into Sara's eyes, seeing not the terror of death, but the absolute, unwavering love of his mate. In that final, terrifying second, the words of the Fey inscription flashed through his mind. Accept the sacrifice. They couldn't cure the volatile love, but they could choose its outcome. "Sara, the Isolator!" Kai yelled, pouring every ounce of his consciousness into the bond. He didn't ask her to take the Isolator or sacrifice her stability. He offered the ultimate, mutual vow. "I choose forever distance. I choose your life over my touch." Sara met his desperate gaze, understanding immediately. The solution was not in the object, but in the shared, unconditional relinquishment of their deepest desire. "I accept the distance," Sara screamed, joining her will to his. "I accept the Isolator for both of us." At the sound of their shared, unconditional acceptance, the surrender of their right to touch, the Aetherium Isolator, which lay on the pedestal untouched, activated with a silent, brilliant flash of silver energy. The supernova between them instantly imploded, contained and stabilized, leaving them standing untouched amid the violently collapsing rubble. Chapter 7. The silence was the loudest sound Kai and Sara had ever heard. The moment of their shared, unconditional acceptance, the vow to choose life and permanent distance over a single, lethal touch, had stabilized the supernova and miraculously halted the mine's total collapse. They stood in a small, miraculously protected bubble amid tons of hanging rubble, their bodies trembling from the traumatic physical contact and the immense release of energy. Chloe, the earth elemental, was buried beneath a pile of stone and dirt, neutralized and defeated by the very chaos she had summoned. The Aetherium Isolator, still humming on its pedestal, had completed its work. It didn't remove the magnetic volatility, it contained it. A field of silver, shimmering energy now encased the 6-foot void between Kai and Sara, acting as a permanent, immovable buffer. The oppressive, agony-inducing pull was gone, replaced by a subtle, firm resistance. They could no longer be slammed together by external force or internal desire. They looked at each other, separated by the glowing, invisible energy field, the physical manifestation of their lifelong sacrifice. "It worked," Sara whispered, testing the boundary by reaching out a hand. Her fingers met the invisible barrier, which felt cold and solid, preventing her from closing the final, agonizing inches. The pull is gone, but so is the choice. Kai, his alpha body battered and stitched with minor cuts from the debris, stepped up to the boundary. He placed his hand against the invisible wall, his expression one of profound loss mixed with immense relief. "The Fae didn't want us to cure our power, mate. They wanted us to surrender our comfort. We are safe now, but the distance is the cure." The reality was a cold shock. They had fought for days to bridge the gap, only to willingly make that gap permanent. They were physically tethered, their lives perpetually revolving around each other, yet forbidden the most fundamental expression of their bond. The new law of their relationship was a 6-foot perimeter enforced by magic. Suddenly, Kai's alpha senses snapped to alert. The mine was still compromised, and they had spent too long celebrating their survival. "The pack house," Kai stated, his voice ringing with renewed alpha authority. "We need to get out and return home. We are whole, but the territory is exposed, and Chloe is only defeated, not dead." The next challenge wasn't fighting the curse, but living with it. They were safe, but forever apart. The immediate task was survival. Kai and Sara, though permanently separated by the silver shimmering containment field, worked with the flawless coordination that their intense, volatile journey had forged. Kai, ignoring the pain of the embedded shrapnel, used his immense strength to stabilize the remaining support pillars, creating a narrow, safe path out of the collapsed mine. Sara provided steady streams of focused light, ensuring their exit wasn't blocked by hidden debris or unstable conductors. They emerged from the mountainside into the crisp, cool air of their own territory, victorious but forever altered. The Aetherium Isolator had stabilized their lives, but at the cost of their intimacy. News of the Alpha's successful return and the containment of the volatile curse spread quickly through the Shadow Moon pack. The pack elder, relieved to see the volatile mate pair alive and contained, quickly called an emergency council meeting. Navigating the pack house was the first, most surreal test of their new normal. Kai and Sara moved as a permanent, coupled unit, always together, always leading, always 6 feet apart. During the council meeting, they sat at the head table, the silent, shimmering barrier of the isolator field running down the center between their chairs. They were the Alpha and Luna, the most powerful pair in the territory, yet they couldn't exchange a secret glance or a comforting touch. Their shared commitment to the pack, however, was absolute. Their communication now a seamless, silent language of shared glances and transmitted intentions via the bond. Later that evening, in their private chambers, now a massive space deliberately bisected by the invisible silver field, the emotional reality of the permanent distance hit them. They stood on opposite sides of the room, looking across the agonizingly short, unbridgeable space. "We won, Sara," Kai murmured, placing his hand on the barrier. "We're safe. The pack is safe. You're stable." Sara mirrored his gesture, her hand meeting the cool resistance of the containment field. "I know, and I wouldn't trade that safety for anything. But I wish—" She trailed off, unable to articulate the primal ache of being unable to comfort the man whose back was scarred with obsidian shrapnel from protecting her. I wish I could heal you properly. This distance, it's a constant, gentle form of torture. Kai smiled sadly. It's the price of a love that's too powerful for this world, mate. We accepted the distance to save our lives. Now we live with it. We will have to learn a new language of love, one without touch, one defined by devotion and trust. He rested his head against the barrier. We'll build a life, a family, and a pack that understands that our bond is stronger because of the miles we didn't cross. And when we look at each other, we'll remember that we chose each other over everything, even the simple comfort of a touch. Their faces were inches apart, separated by the glowing silver field, a testament to a love that was absolute, permanent, and eternally constrained. The epilogue, 3 years later. The Shadow Moon Pack had never been stronger. Alpha Kai and Luna Sara ruled with unwavering authority and a seamless, almost telepathic coordination. The Aetherium Isolator remained a permanent glowing silver barrier, the most visible unspoken law of the pack. The legend of the Alpha and the Luna who couldn't touch became a strange source of strength for their people. They learned to interpret the unique language of their leaders. A shared glance was a battle strategy. A hand held 6 feet away communicated deep, unshakable comfort. They stood together on the highest hill overlooking their territory, where the wind carried the scent of their domain. The setting sun cast long shadows, but the silver field separating them glowed steadily. Kai, fully healed, was explaining a border expansion plan. The northern trails are secure. The trade routes will open next month, Kai summarized, his voice deep and steady. He paused, feeling Sara's transmission through the bond. You're tired. You've been working on this for 3 weeks. I'm fine, mate, Kai replied aloud, smiling faintly. But thank you for the reminder. He reached out his hand, stopping precisely at the invisible boundary, his palm facing hers. Sara reached out her own hand, mirroring the gesture. We won the war against the curse, Kai, but every day is a test of our control. Our son. She stopped, glancing at the pack house where their young, energetic pup was currently causing happy chaos under the watchful eyes of the elder. He needs to know that a mate bond isn't about needing to touch, but choosing to stay. Their son, thankfully, had inherited a stable, unvolatile version of both the wolf and elemental energies, a gift of the isolator's stabilization. He knew his parents communicated in a way no one else did, and he knew never to step into the glowing perimeter between them. Kai looked at the barrier, no longer seeing a prison, but a testament. The Fae tried to break us by making our love destructive. Instead, they forced us to love each other in the most absolute way, without the distraction of physical comfort. We proved that the soul's commitment is stronger than the body's desire. He rested his forehead against the silver field, closing the distance to the very limit of possibility. Sara mirrored the action, their faces inches apart, sharing the energy without the annihilation. I remember what it felt like to hold you, Sara, Kai whispered, his voice thick with emotion. But I wouldn't trade the safety of our pack and your life for one moment of touch. And I wouldn't trade this stability, Sara countered, her elemental power now fully at peace, contained by the constant, immovable presence of his love just 6 feet away. We taught the world that distance doesn't weaken a true mate bond. It defines it. The sun dipped below the mountains, and the unique couple remained there, forever separate but absolutely whole, leading their pack with a love measured not by closeness, but by the immovable boundary of their eternal sacrifice.